This is BBC Radio 4, and now Professor Geoffrey Richards explores the Scarlet Pimpernel's radio incarnations and his enduring appeal.
They seek him here, they seek him there. Those Frenchies seek him everywhere. Is he in heaven? Is he in hell? That damned elusive Pimpernel.
The Scarlet Pimpernel, in reality Sir Percy Blakeney Baronet, a character who decisively fixed the image of the French Revolution in the minds of successive generations of readers. The books and later films charting his adventures established beyond doubt that the French revolutionaries were a bloodthirsty, beastly, ungentlemanly mob, and that a well-brought-up aristocrat could run rings round them, particularly if he were an English aristocrat. So, liberty, equality and fraternity came off a definite second best to chivalry, duty and noblesse oblige. The Pimpernel was the perfect wish-fulfillment hero. To the world at large, an innocuous, rather insignificant figure, but in reality a daredevil adventurer, master of disguise, righter of wrongs, and enemy of tyranny. Paradoxically, this most English of English heroes was the creation of a Hungarian, Baroness Emuska Orczy, who recalled his creation in a 1934 radio talk.
I had gone to interview the editor of a new daily paper about to be launched in London. This editor, who knew something of the short story work I had done for magazines, suggested that I should write a romantic story which he could run as a serial in his paper. I was immensely flattered by the suggestion, but there was a very great but. I had practically no experience in the writing of a novel, let alone a romantic one. What was to be done? Where was inspiration to come from? More despondent than flattered, I made my way back towards home, which was in Kensington. It was a dreary, foggy day in November. In fact, a typically London day. My way was by underground, and presently I found myself on the platform of the Temple station, waiting for my westbound train. Now I ask you, my dear Scarlet Pimpernel, can you tell me of a more dismal, more uninspiring, more unromantic spot in all the world than the platform of a London underground railway station on a foggy afternoon? And yet, it all seems like yesterday. Dozing and dreaming, I see it all again. And I see you, the inimitable, the exquisite, the dashing and gallant Scarlet Pimpernel, who came to me on that dreary, dismal afternoon in November, out of the London fog and the fumes of the underground railway. You walked along the platform, looking about you through your quizzing glass. You had on your magnificent coat of many capes, and billows of exquisite Mechlin lace showed at your throat and wrists. And I heard your voice, the voice that once called to 19 English gentlemen to risk their lives at a word from you, to save the weak and innocent from persecution and from death.
Zounds! It was the finest sport. Why, Demi, I even gave up hunting foxes.
There, I can hear it now. Of course, there will be many who won't believe this story of the Underground Railway and of my vision of you. And there will be countless others who will want some sort of explanation of it. Well, there is no explanation. It happened. That is all I know.
Inspired by her vision, Baroness Orczy wrote her novel, The Scarlet Pimpernel, in 5 weeks flat. But no publisher would take it. No one was interested in the French Revolution, they said. Undaunted, Baroness Orczy and her husband Montague Barstow turned it into a play, and it was taken up in 1903 by actor-manager Fred Terry. A success in the provinces, it was damned by the London critics and looked like failing. But word of mouth kept it alive. The public took it to their hearts, and Fred Terry was to star in it off and on for 20 years. The success of the play ensured the publication in 1905 of the novel, and there followed 11 sequels. Film and television adaptations have kept the character vividly alive. But he's also had a radio career. What explains the enduring appeal of the Pimpernel? The writer Mary Cadogan is a long-time admirer of Baroness Orczy.
I think it's very interesting that Sir Percy Blakeney, the Scarlet Pimpernel, was created in 1903, and that we're still seeing versions of the story and reading the books almost 100 years afterwards. Now, I think it probably does spring, in the first instance, from Baroness Hawkes's writing. As I said, she has this extraordinary romantic feeling about the Scarlet Pimpernel, and I think in some way she invested him with an untarnishable glamour, which is rather strange because it was very Edwardian, very much in a way of his period. I mean, this was the handsome hero who sort of debonairly defied death and terrible hazards. I think that one of his strengths was that she said she felt in him she created all that was best and truest about the English character. She was an Anglophile. She was in love with England, although she wasn't English. She says all her love was English, although she was actually Hungarian. All this somehow got into this character of the Scarlet Pimpernel. On the one hand, there are those aspects, the chivalrous, the extraordinarily considerate, the man with great integrity, the gentleman, the perfect gentleman. But of course he was also, and this I think is something that always appeals to English readers and audiences, he was also the intelligent ass. A very much sort of character that we've seen by other people in books and on the stage. I mean, almost a touch of P.T. Wodehouse and all sorts of other writers. He hid his razor-sharp mental capacities beneath this very foppish behaviour, which, of course, foiled his enemies, especially the ones who were out to get him and to kill him. And, of course, this was one of the great strengths of the character.
Chauvelin,
Madame,
do you swear to give me that paper?
the moment I catch the Scarlet Pimpernel.
Zoons, that name again. I've heard nothing else all day. At the club, at the fight, and now here. I protest the fellow's a public nuisance. Oh, I beg your pardon, my dear. Do I intrude?
Oh, no. This is an old acquaintance, Monsieur Chauvelin, the French ambassador, my husband.
Charmed, delighted, enchanted. Devilish clever race, the French. How they speak that unspeakable language of theirs defeats me.
You flatter us, Sir Percy.
Oh, no. You've got the cleverest heads in the world. The only trouble is you all go to pieces round the neck.
Round the neck?
Yeah. Now look at your cravat. Sink me, what a mess. Now, if you'd really like to know how to tie a cravat, I'll tell you, but it isn't easy, mind you. It takes all my brains.
Yeah, I'm sure it would.
Yes, of course. Well, now, look here. You see, first of all, the thing goes twice round the neck, and then the front folds back to allow the back to come to the front. And otherwise, of course, the front would be all behind as it was before, you see.
Percy, what are you talking about?
You don't follow me, my dear. It's exactly what I say. It takes brains, doesn't it, Mr. Chauvelin?
One can see that.
Yes, of course one can.
Well,
yes.
good day, ladies.
No, don't go. No, you and my wife must have so much to say to each other.
We have, but then I promised myself a tete-a-tete with Lady Blakeney at Lord Grenville's ball tomorrow night.
Good, tomorrow night.
Leslie Howard as Percy in the 1938 radio adaptation of The Scarlet Pimpernel, with Olivia de Havilland as Marguerite and Dennis Green as Chauvelin. Counterpointing the adventure, the romance between Percy and Marguerite was central to the stories. Mary Cadogan.
In many ways they were opposites, and it was an odd liaison, but it worked extremely well. She was Marguerite Saint-Just, devastatingly beautiful, a celebrated French actress. Now, Sir Percy was a traditionalist and English. She was very French, very liberal. In fact, she was a Republican, and she was a great supporter of the revolution until she saw the bloodthirsty excesses of it. So it was an unusual combination. But of course, she was so beautiful, she took London by storm, and they were one of the most popular couples in the country and society. There were certain estrangements between them, certain misunderstandings, but generally speaking, theirs was an incredibly romantic relationship. And of course, Baroness Hawkes had no embarrassment whatsoever about laying on the romance. I mean, there's one wonderful scene when they are at the moment estranged, but when Marguerite walks along by the sort of veranda outside their wonderful home and goes in, Sir Percy kneels down and kisses her footprints, you see. Well, you couldn't get away with that kind of writing now, but you could in those days, and it seemed to work extremely well. Marguerite was a very strong character in her own right. She was certainly not content to accept the old adage that men must work and women must weep. And in fact, she often followed him to France. And when she knew that he was in particular danger, she was determined to share all the horrors and the hazards with him. In fact, unwittingly, she sometimes added to those dangers by her very presence, because she was a kind of hostage, of course, a potential hostage. But she gave him lots of opportunities to express his enormous capacity for chivalry and, of course, romance. I think, too, that having Marguerite as a very important character, in fact, the character whom Baroness Orczy apparently liked most in the saga, she helped to bring audience and a readership of women to the stage productions and, of course, to the books. Otherwise, they might have been seen as very much male adventures and perhaps nothing much else.
Starting with Dustin Farnham in a 1917 adaptation of The Scarlet Pimpernel, there have been many screen Blakeneys. Among them, Matheson Lang, David Niven, Anthony Andrews, and most recently, Richard E. Grant. But one actor stands out in the role, Leslie Howard.
I think one has to say that of all the film versions of The Scarlet Pimpernel, Leslie Howard's portrayal is definitive. He looked right, his voice was absolutely perfect for the part. He had that wonderful combination of seriousness and rather laconic humour. He put this across extraordinarily well. I don't think any better actor could have been found, although, strangely enough, both Alexander Korda, the producer, and Baroness Orczy, the writer, wanted Charles Laughton to play the part, who would have been totally unsuitable. And I think they didn't value Leslie Howard so finely at the beginning. It was a wonderful production in 1934, with Merle Oberon as Marguerite, Raymond Massey as Chauvelin. Of course, after 1934, there were other films made. I don't think any of them had the same charisma, and I don't think anyone came near to being such a perfect embodiment of the Scarlet Pimpernel.
In that room upstairs, there is a woman under arrest who has forfeited her life by aiding the enemies of the Republic.
What woman?
Your wife, Sir Percy, who loves you very much.
Marguerite.
Is the game up, Sir Percy? Is this the last adventure?
All right, I give up, Chauvelin. What next?
There is a firing squad outside.
And my wife?
The Revolutionary Tribunal.
That means death.
It would have meant my death if I had not caught you. But don't be alarmed, Sir Percy. I don't want your wife's life. She is free the moment you die.
I offer you a pact. If you promise to say nothing to her, if you send her onto my ship immediately, I'll walk up in front of your firing squad.
I accept. Sergeant, yes, monsieur. Bring the lady downstairs, please. You must be very fond of your wife, Sir Percy.
Yes, I am. Is that so strange?
Not at all. A charming woman.
Percy.
Marguerite.
Percy, I came to help you as soon as I knew. I wanted to give my life to save you. And now, oh, forgive me, Percy.
You came to help me. Chauvelin didn't bring you?
No, I came with Sir Andrew.
Marguerite.
What are they going to do to you? Tell me.
Oh, I'm in no danger, my dear.
What? No, you're lying. I know he's going to kill you. I can see it in his eyes. Percy, don't leave me. I want to die with you. I won't.
Marguerite.
She fainted. From water, perhaps.
No. Our parting would be too cruel now, even for you. Take her while she's still unconscious. Goodbye, my sweet. It's good to know that you love me. A little.
Sergeant, carry her to Sir Percy's boat. The boat is to sail the minute Sir Percy dies. The lady is free when you hear the firing squad.
Yes.
Well, he's gone, monsieur. Now, are you quite ready?
Yes. By the way, do you like poetry, Monsieur Chauvelin?
That cursed, elusive Pimpernel?
No. I mean poetry. This other Eden, demi-paradise. This fortress built by nature for herself against infection and the hand of war. This happy breed of men, this little world. This precious stone set in the silver sea. This blessed plot. This earth, this realm, this England. I forget the rest.
Lines firing. Halt! Round mark. The firing squad. They're waiting.
Will you come and see me die, monsieur?
No, thank you. I shall remain here. I shall picture the scene in my own way.
Yes, of course, of course. Make it as horrible as possible. Good night, monsieur.
Good night.
Whoa!
Present.
Present.
Fire.
Fire.
That cursed elusive pimpernel.
I'm so sorry, monsieur. Yes, I had to come back for my hat. It's such a cursed good hat, you know.
Leslie Howard, recreating his 1934 screen role in the 1938 Lux Radio Theatre adaptation broadcast in America. The Scarlet Pimpernel returned to the airwaves in 1952, thanks to the initiative of the innovative and enterprising radio producer Harry Alan Towers. Towers, who before the war had worked for Radio Luxembourg, and during the war had produced programmes for Forces Radio, set up a company called Towers of London in 1945 to produce and sell pre-recorded programmes worldwide. He broke into the all-important American market with The Lives of Harry Lime, starring Orson Welles, a radio series inspired by the hit film The Third Man. This led, indirectly, to Towers producing The Adventures of the Scarlet Pimpernel.
My life with Orson was always exciting and frequently led to new ideas. On one occasion he was complaining about a particular Harry Lime script which he felt developed Harry Lime in an unfavourable light, and he said, "You're making me sound like the Scarlet Pimp." So we laughed together, and then I said, "Hey, that's not a bad idea." Well, this had given me a taste for blood, and I checked out to find that the late Baroness Orksey, in addition to writing The Scarlet Pimpernel, had written a sequel book called The Adventures of the Scarlet Pimpernel. I promptly bought it from her son, together with the right to make a radio series called The Adventures of the Scarlet Pimpernel. So Alexander Corder was livid. Once again he'd been outsmarted. But I went to see him and made a deal with him, and we became close friends.
The series went out over Radio Luxembourg in 52 episodes, beginning on December the 1st, 1952. Marius Goring played the Pimpernel, but this series dispensed with Marguerite and concentrated squarely on adventure.
You have had no sign of trouble?
None, citizen. The boy sleeps in that room. There are no windows. With these 2 additional men you have brought, we are quite secure.
The Pimpernel will not bring many men with him. He never does, 1 or 2 at most. You will soon have the pleasure of slapping his face, Mollet.
Thank you, citizen comrade Chauvelin. But suppose he doesn't like the idea.
Huh? Mollet? You are not Mollet. Your voice is
English. You're quite right.
The Scarlet Pimpernel. Seize him! Soldiers, seize him!
We 7 of us did 1 comrade.
But 2 of us are with him. Draw your swords! Kill the 3 of them! Swords!
I'll take this chap.
Now we're even. 3 swords to 3.
Which isn't very fair to them. Do as I say. Put your sword down and get the boy. Get him out to the coach.
Don't go in there!
Chauvelin, you move toward that door and I'll run you through.
Kill him! Concentrate on the Pimpernel!
Aha! You shouldn't have said that, citizen. You distracted your soldier. He is now at a decided disadvantage.
Surrender! We surrender, monsieur!
Ah, that's better. This room has become so cluttered it was impossible to carry the child through.
What's wrong with him?
Oh, just sleeping, as only a boy can sleep. He isn't very plump, though. I'd say he hasn't fed too well. Wouldn't you, Monsieur Chauvelin?
He'll fare better in the future. Take him out to the carriage.
I wish I knew your face. I wish I knew your own true face, monsieur. Someday I will.
Possibly, monsieur. But until that day, the Scarlet Pimpernel can be recognized as only a small and plentiful flower decorating the English countryside. All right, gentlemen, let's get that child to his mother.
The veteran broadcaster David Jacobs, then a young actor, played Blakeney's right-hand man, Lord Tony Dewhurst.
It was a marvellous period in my life because, really and truly, although I'd been at it for 5 or 6 years, I was quite new to broadcasting and hadn't worked as an actor with really tremendous radio and stage actors. And this series was filled with them. The star, of course, was Marius Goring, who was absolutely brilliant and marvellous to work with. And he was such a friendly fellow. He couldn't have been funnier. We laughed through a great deal of the series because, for example, the script would say Sir Percy Blakeney, and then in brackets it would say Barks, the next statement, and he would go woof, and we would all collapse with laughter. And then there was a lovely actor called Freddie Treves, who's now very well known on television and radio, of course, but very much known on television, who was standing opposite me one day when we were in a very dramatic scene, and suddenly the microphone started to lower itself slowly down towards the ground. And we continued the scene literally sitting on the floor because we didn't want to stop recording, because recording was very expensive in those days because it was recorded on disc, and that was a very expensive way to record. The scripts were written by an American called Joel Murcutt, and I always thought it was strange that we should have such a British story written by an American. And he was a much married man who used to sit there all the time flirting with any girl that we might have had in it. And I said to him, "Why have you been married so often?" He said, "Well, David, if you got something you don't like, get rid of it." Harry Allen Towers, the producer, and I first met when he was a flying officer in the Royal Air Force and I was in the Navy. And we were part of a thing called the Overseas Recorded Broadcasting Service, recording programs for the Forces Radio overseas, to which I actually found myself involved later at Radio SIAC in Ceylon. I came back from there, and Harry Allen Towers, out of uniform, and also Jacobs out of uniform, we started to work together. And he used me in an enormous number of shows. And I remember very well waiting for that call, because he'd never booked me till the last minute. He'd keep us all the actors on tenterhooks to make sure that we were hungry and waiting for the job. We had a very nice man called Tig Rowe who directed it from the other side of the screen. It was all recorded at a studio across the road from Broadcasting House, 35 Portland Place, which was very much used by Radio Normandy and Radio Luxembourg in those days. And Tig Rowe later became one of the heads of light entertainment for Associated Rediffusion. So I continued working with him. The Scarlet Pimpernel really was tremendously exciting. It was marvellous, really, to be part of it, because we really had the flavour of the period. And you know, that's the marvellous thing about radio. You can tell somebody what year they're supposed to be in, and they immediately join that year. You don't have to dress them up or make them up. Just tell them where you are, and you go off. And, of course, the story of Pimpernel is so well known anyway that people are transported to that period anyway. But we did some marvellous programmes. Marius Goring, of course, was Sir Percy Blakeney, and I was Tony Dewhurst, his sidekick. We were the only two regular characters in the cast, but there were regular actors in the cast. It was a sort of repertory company, and I believe that many of them were from the BBC repertory company, certainly names that you would know well, and voices that you would know well. And whilst we recorded, I think, 4 programmes in a day, which was quite unknown in those days, they were not slipshod. They were very well done, very well edited, and the effects department worked overtime to get everything absolutely right.
We could not outrun them. As soon as that became obvious, I called for all armed and mounted men to fall back while the wagons went on. Moments later, the battle was joined.
They outnumber us 2-1, monsieur.
This rise gives us the advantage of the terrain, though. If we can hold them here long enough.
How long is long enough?
3 hours.
Oh.
That will give the wagons enough of a lead to reach Dunkirk before the pursuit. If they had a few more men to flank us, though, our chances would be slim.
And they are slim, monsieur. Look, in the distance.
Good heavens. More mounted men. Almost 50 of them.
What do we do?
What we are doing.
More men are coming, Englishmen! Surrender now or be annihilated!
Come and get us, Lieutenant, because you'll never pass this point while we live. These men are...
Monsieur, heaven be praised!
What?
Those horsemen approaching are not troops. Look, the men rise in the lead. It is Ferdinand!
was right. It was Ferney, and the horsemen with him swooped into the battle in grim silence. Lieutenant Delon's troops were caught in a sudden crossfire. They broke and scattered in demoralized retreat. Delon rode about frantically, trying to reorganize. I charged at him.
Hold troops! Come back, you cowards!
You're beaten, Lieutenant. Drop your sword.
You!
Drop it, or I will most certainly kill you. Order your men to hold and surrender.
Hold! Hold, men! Surrender!
Take their arms and their horses. Leave them unharmed on the foot.
Ah, monsieur, it is good to see you alive.
It's good to see you alive, too, Ferney. We thought you were new troops to reinforce them.
No, after you left the cathedral, I remember that another group similar to ours was holding secret church services in another place. I called upon them to join us. My wife and children, monsieur?
Ahead of us, on the road to Dunkirk. We'll catch up to them in no time.
What do we do with these prisoners, monsieur?
Start them back to Paris on foot. By the time they reach help, we'll be crossing the channel.
You win this time, monsieur, but you and I will have another day of reckoning.
Yes, we will, Lieutenant Delon. But sooner than you think. You'll accompany us to the beach at Dunkirk. When we get there, I'll give you another opportunity to slap me, with my hands untied. All right, Ferney. Men, let's join the others, shall we? We're on our way to England.
To England, comrades. To eat, to work, to worship in freedom. To England! To England!
All right, all. Forward!
Forward!
The appeal of the Scarlet Pimpernel is as potent today as it was in 1903, as the success of the recent television series starring Richard E. Grant demonstrates. Times may change and values alter, but decent hearts still beat a little faster at the thought that there will always be men willing to risk their lives to rescue the victims of tyranny and injustice.
Channel's a bit rough tonight, Tony. Yes. I'm afraid half our passengers are seasick. Oh, well. Mal de mer is better than bubonic plague. Not to Dr. Chauvelin, I'll wager. You know, we were mighty lucky, Tony. After all, those Frenchies must have fired 1,000 rounds. Never touched one of us. Well, how could they? What do you mean, how could they? Well, after all, old boy, Fuchs and I do a little thinking, too. Yeah. While they were digging the graves, we emptied their guns and put in blank charges.
Next Tuesday at the same time, Horatio Hornblower provides all of the action.